Hi Not Board Gamers, and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be doing a brief review, and I'll explain why it's brief, of the Plum Island Horror from Hermann Luttmann and published by GMT Games. Now, it's a bit of a rage at the moment. It's a 1 to 4 player tower defense game where you have horrors and zombies and mutations coming at you, and you're trying to save civilians whilst lasting over a 3-day cycle. And it's kind of a special game, to tell you the truth. It's kind of landed fairly recently, and a lot of people are absolutely loving the game. So why am I doing a brief review? Well, first of all, as you can hear from my voice, I'm not being very well this week. I had flu. I was meant to do this review, last Sunday. And that was the day I got ill. And it's now the following Saturday, and I'm still suffering. So I don't want to talk for an hour about a game. And secondly, I'm not going to go into depth, any great depth, on the gameplay, because Daniel Anderson over at Tabletop for One has done a couple of really great how to play videos, and I really recommend that you watch those videos, because there are quite a few rules in the game, and in your first game or so you're probably going to play a few of them wrong, but Daniel's covered that in a far greater depth than I could ever cover it, and I recommend that you go and watch those videos if you want to learn how to play the game. So what is Plum Island Horror? As I say, it's from GMT, from Hermann Luttmann. Now, if you probably know Hermann Luttmann from, he's done many games, but he's probably most famous to board gamers like us for his Dawn of the Zeds game, which is an absolute masterpiece. And again, that's a kind of tower defense game, and it's got kind of 5 rule books as the game gets, as you can add more and more rules into there. Well, this is like a pared down version of that, a more streamlined version of that, a more accessible version of that. And what's happened is there's this government facility, Plum Island, and a big storm's come in and it's knocked some chemicals over or whatever, and unfortunately what's done is created some mutations and some horrors in the island, on the island, and they're advancing, and over this 3-day period you first of all got to identify that they exist, and then you've got to try and save as many civilians as you have whilst battling the biohazard threat and stopping the horrors from overrunning the facilities. You see, the game has many ways for you to lose and only one way for you to win. You have to survive all 3 days, and there are 3 cycles per day, all 3 days, and you have to have got out at least 26 points worth of, evacuated should I say, at least 26 points worth of civilians. If you've done that, then fine, you've won the game. But you can lose in many ways as well. There's a biohazard track that will continue to climb as you pull cubes and add cubes to this bag here, and you have kind of red, green and yellow cubes there, which will potentially move the biohazard track up. They can overrun. So if they get to any kind of the yellow facilities on the board, that's another way that they can that you can lose the game. There are just you can run out of horror stacks, and that's going to continue to push things up. It's a game that punishes you if you don't do things right, and it feels like, kind of say 3 days, 3 cycles per day, variant number of actions per cycle. Feels like you've got a lot of time to do that, but in reality, once it starts kind of building, you get through that first couple of phases or first couple of cycles, and once it starts building and moving forward, then quite frankly it can get overpowering pretty quickly. Now, as I say, it's soloable. It's 1 to 4 players. As a solo gamer, you're going to choose 2 of the 6 available factions in the base box. There's also some NPCs that some will start on the board and some may get brought onto the board by various card actions, etc. You will draw tokens out of the bag to find out which faction is going, or whether it's a fate turn, or whether it's an event that happens. You see, in this bag here, you have your tokens, and as a solo gamer, you're going to put 2 tokens per faction in there. So at the moment on here, I got orange and purple factions. I've got the purple is the Greenport Township, and the orange is the Islanders Athletic Club. And I've got 2 tokens per faction here. So put those into the bag, along with these red fate tokens. There are 3 red fate tokens, and also one black event token. So each cycle that you play in the game, I say there's 3 cycles per day, morning, afternoon and night. Each cycle, you're going to draw tokens out of the bag until there's no more tokens in there, and then you're going to move that on. If it's your turn, if you draw one of your tokens out, you're going to do actions with that particular faction and some follow-on actions with the other factions. If the fate token comes out, you're going to draw one of these fate cards here. And these fate cards are kind of the driving mechanism in the game. They don't just kind of dictate what happens on the board, but they also use numbers to dictate, they don't just dictate what happens with the horrors, but they also have numbers on there to kind of dictate if there's a split fork in there and certain other decisions as well. Now the fate cards are, as I say, really, really important. And if you draw a fate token out, generally it's got a couple of lines on there. So the top line is going to be a spawn action, and it says here on this one to spawn on track 3. So you're going to look at your biohazard track and find out whether you're spawning 3 or 4 horrors on there, and right at the top of the board you're going to take these 3 tokens here, or 3 of these horrors tokens, and put them on the track if it's that particular one. And then it says to activate, and that's the track that actually moves. So that's a different track there. So on this, it's a fairly straightforward card. You only put spawning on 1 and activating on 1. So spawning on track 3, activating on track 4. When you activate, the horrors are going to move down, and the mutations are going to move down, and that may initiate combat, or they may kill civilians. And if they kill civilians, then what's going to happen is the horror stack is going to increase. But that's not the simplicity of all of the fate cards. You see, there are some more complex ones on there as well. For example, this one has chaos at the top and activate tracks 2 and 5. And for chaos, you draw 2 fate numbers. So down at the bottom here, you have these numbers on this card. These are your fate numbers. And this says that you draw 2 fate numbers and spawn murders of horrors units on the tracks equaling those fate numbers. So there it says I would draw 2. I would spawn murders of horrors on tracks 3 and 4 there. And then it says to activate tracks 2 and 5. So you're activating 2 tracks. So suddenly that's coming in there. Here we have a reanimated, which is, again, you draw a fate number and you add 2 tiles to each murder of horrors unit located on the track that you've drawn that fate number for. And that is then activating 1, 2 and 3 as well there. So the fate cards drive that. They also drive your actions. So let's get back to your actions. As a player, when it's your action, you get to take, first of all, what's called a crisis move. And basically, I think it's called a crisis move, 1 second. Yeah, you get to take, I think it's called a crisis move. That means you can move all of your units, and you will have on the board 5, maybe 6 units. You can move them 1 space if you want, basically. And then you get to take a predefined number of actions based on the day and the cycle of the day that you're on. So on the very first game that you're playing, on the very first day, morning of October 25th, which is day 1, you only get to take 1 action per token drawn. In the afternoon, you get to take 2 actions. And in the nighttime phase, you get to take 3 actions, and then it goes down 3 actions on all of the middle day, which is October 26th. Then on October 22nd, you start taking 3 actions in the morning, 2 actions in the afternoon, and only 1 action at night. So you have this variant number of actions, and the actions you can take, there's quite a few. You can take a move action, which is the move symbol that's on your characters. You can do combat, and there's 2 types of combat, which is close combat. And combat uses a series of dice depending on what's on your character. Or there's ranged combat as well, if you have a ranged ability on there. You can do crowd control, where you can move civilians from 1 space to the next, up to what's called your administrative level. You can evacuate, where you can use vehicles like helicopters and boats to evacuate civilians. You can use a special action if your character has a special action. You can repair, because there is damage that's set up around the board, and it's quite important sometimes to repair that damage to help move. But also, that damage can slow down the drive of the horrors. You can build your compound. That is the 5th unit on your faction board. You can use a location action, where you can search. And there's a search deck here where you can get good stuff from, or you can reduce the biohazard track, or you can get supplies as well. You can heal if your character has a heal ability, or if you're in a hospital or something like that. Or you can reposition that. Not on your main go, you can't. And I'll come back to that. I'll come back to repositions in a second. So those are the turns the moves you can do. And as I say, in the first day, you're choosing one unit, and that unit gets to do one action. So that's quite, it's quite the puzzle working out which unit is best spending that action on. And as the game progresses, obviously you've got more units that can do actions on there. Now, after you've taken your turn, what happens is that the other player, or the other faction, is a solo gamer, gets to take a follow-on action. In reality, as a solo gamer, the other faction gets to take 2 follow-on actions. And as a follow-on action, they can do any of those actions that we mentioned, I think other than a special action, but they also get to reposition. And what they can do with reposition is you can move a helicopter or a boat to another legal area where it can move to. So that's a really, your vehicle movement can only come as a reposition, as a follow-on action. Now, follow-on actions aren't free. There's a cost, and for a follow-on action, you have to draw a fate card. Now, if down at the bottom you see that there, it says no event card, then that's good. You don't, that fate, that hasn't cost you anything really in reality. But when you draw a fate card and it says down there, draw an event card, and there we go, you can see it's in orange, it says draw an event card. You draw one of these black cards here, and these are always bad things that happen. So this one here says patient 0. Spawn 3 Murder of Horrors tiles in the Good Samaritan Hospital, then draw 3 cubes from the biohazard bag and apply their effects. Place the drawn cubes back in the bag. So that is increasing the number of horrors on the board, and also giving you the ability to, well, not the ability, the unfortunate task of potentially increasing the biohazard track. So if I drew 3 cubes out here, the worst possible, almost the worst possible one, that's 2 red and 1 yellow. That means I would have moved my biohazard track on 5, basically, which is not great. So there's lots of ways that the game is going to kind of try and punish you, if you like. Now, say that's your faction tokens and the follow-on actions. I've talked about fate tokens. The last one is the event token that you draw, and that's this one here. And when you draw that, you draw one of these black event cards I've just talked about. So you get this constant dogpiling happening on you all the time. Your actions are limited. You do those follow-on actions that you take. They're really, really important to kind of get the success of the game. But they do come at a cost, and they will potentially trigger more events for you. So you will do that. That will complete a cycle. Then what will happen is you will get to the end of the round of that particular cycle. Let me just get to the book here. And the end phase is you're going to replenish locations. Now that only happens in the night, on the night phase of the game. And by replenishing locations, what that means is that when you do a search action or you carry out a location action, like searching, like reducing the biohazard, like taking supplies, you're going to generally put an exhaust token on there. Okay, mutant regeneration step, because as well as the horrors, you get these mutants, and there are 6 mutants that can be brought out onto the board, based generally on the event cards. You're going to try and get them off, and by damaging them, but they're going to regenerate. They're going to heal 1 every end phase. Then you get the biohazard infection step, which is what I mentioned here, which is drawing these cubes from the bag. Then you refill the turn order bag, and you advance the game round marker, and you go on again, and you will do that over 9 phases. So as I say, the game gets kind of progressively harder the longer that you play the game. So that's a really brief overview on the gameplay. As I say, if you really want to go and have a look at exactly how to play the game, because there's lots of kind of rules minutiae in here, and I'll come on to that in a second. Then go and check out Daniel Anderson's videos on Tabletop for One. So that's a brief overview on that. So what are my thoughts on Plum Island Horror? Well, let's start about the good. The artwork is I love it. It's kind of this kind of pulpy kind of artwork here. The game is obviously played for fun. Everything about the game is fun. It's a GMT game, so it's lots of chits and cardboard chits and tokens and standees, etc. And I can see over time that people are going to start blinging this out, and I think that's really, really good. The map, on the downside, the player board is big. Sorry, not player board. Yeah, the game board is a big game. It's going to take up quite a bit of table real estate, but it needs to be because of what happens in the locations on there, because of the size of everything else. Don't think they could have condensed it anymore. So on the downside, it is that. But on the positive side is it's really well structured. You have these 6 definite tracks where the horrors are going to move down. You can move down and across on many of them, and the horrors are generally only going to move down. There may be the odd event that allows them to move laterally rather than kind of vertically. But yeah, generally they're going to move down, and it's structured really well. It gives that streamlined feel. And if you play tower defense kind of arcade games on the phone or on PC or on console, etc., you get the flow. You know you've got this stuff always coming down towards you. So components-wise, I really like it. The streamlined gameplay is very, very good. Once you get into the flow and you understand how to play the game and you got grip with the rules, then what's going to happen is that you're going to feel this game kind of not that it doesn't take any time to play, but it feels intuitive to play it and I think that's really, really good. There's not lots of kind of with Dawn of the Zeds, because you were adding on rules with additional rule books, it got quite complex. What they've done here is there's only one form of supplies that covers your food, it covers your ammunition. You have to feed your units in the nighttime. In the nighttime phase as well. That all comes from supplies. So there isn't like a food supply or an ammunition or a fuel supply. It's all just supplies that do that. So I've managed to streamline some of the elements that are a bit more complex in a game like Dawn of the Zeds and make it more accessible for people there. I think the variability in the factions is good. I say there are 6 factions, I believe, come with the box. And the variability is good because each character has their own actions and potentially their own special actions as well. Some of them have special actions, some don't. And that is good as well because getting to use those individual abilities on those units makes you kind of strategize a little bit more there and makes you kind of, right, do I do this, and then it means I can't do that, and therefore that could come down here and get me. So you're constantly thinking about the best way to do that. It creates a really good kind of dynamic puzzle for you as it's going on. All of the kind of player boards that you have, so you have the faction boards, you have the NPC units, you have the horrors mutations, and you have the kind of the tracker board where you're going to keep the cubes and track the day count, the biohazard levels and the overrun and the evacuation. They've all got additional bits on there as well of information. So you're not really stuck for information once you learn how to play the game. If you are, you can look on here and it's got various tables like the modifiers for whether you're doing combat in a building or a forest or a clear area. Building or a forest or a clear area, because that can affect things as well. And the variant types of combat. Close combat is good, but every time you do close combat against the horrors, what's going to happen is they're going to put cube in one of the bags. So you've got to think about, do I do range combat? So I don't have to put cubes in the bag, but the problem with range combat in most cases is it's going to cost you a supply, and supplies are, you might get through the end of your first day and be okay to feed all your units, but by the end of the second day, if you've not kind of plan for supplies effectively and you're using supplies to do range combat, so you're not adding cubes into the bag, and what's going to happen is that you're not going to get enough supplies to feed your troops, and you're going to start taking hits on there. And you take hits, and over time they will build up. I think on this game I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6 in total out of my 12 potential units across the 2 factions that died during the game, and a lot of them run the kind of the last gasp, if you like, with 1 health left. So you got pretty close on that, because if an entire faction dies, that's game over as well there. So yeah, kind of that definition between range combat and not range combat is, and close combat should I say, and making that choice is really, really good. There isn't a limited dice play. So for people that don't like dice play, it's minimal, but it does happen in range, in combat, should I say, not just in range, but in close combat as well. And the dice have various faces on them. You've got a full heart there, which is a hit. You've got a half heart, and if you get 2 dice with half hearts, that's a hit. You got a critical hit there. If you get that, you get to roll again. And you have a shield, which obviously blocks things generally. And then there's a blank face on there. But not only are you rolling dice, but also the mutations roll dice against you. The horrors don't. They work out, their strength of attack is worked out based on what area they're attacking you from. So yeah, combat works well, but there is some dice to think about in there. But the main beating heart of the game is this fate deck, basically. I say this drives so many things in the game. Not just where the horrors spawn and where they activate, but kind of whether you're going to draw an event card, what route they're going to take, randomly generating things on there. They're all going to be used from this fate deck, and you will recycle and reshuffle that a number of times in your game. So I say 3 days, kind of 3 phases per day, so that's 9 days, but there are also kind of a variant number of actions per day that you can take, which means you have, I could work it out, I suppose, but you have, I think somebody worked it out in the forums, potentially, if you're playing solo, about 84 actions over an entire game, basically, if you last to the end of the game. And what that means is that gameplay can run long. Now, this may be a bit of a downside for people. First of all, I've talked about table space. It does take up a lot of table space. The board is big, but it's necessarily big. I don't have problems. Fortunately, I'm in a position where I have a big table. Excuse me, but the bigger problem for a lot of people may be the gameplay. The game length, should I say. Because your first game is probably going to take around about 2.5 hours as a solo gamer. Maybe longer. I think the more I've played it, and I've played 7 games now, the more I played it, I've got that down. I'm probably somewhere in the region of, if I can get through to a full game, around about the 90-minute mark to the 2-hour mark. But it's still long for a solo game. Now, if you play it with other people, I hear that games can run into 3 and 4 hours length. And that can be off-putting for people because we don't always have that time or the ability to leave a game set up on the table. And it is a game that, I fortunately, because of where I play my games, I can leave it set up for a few days and I can nip in and out of a game and play it over a couple of days. So I'm fortunate, but not everybody has that ability. So if you're looking for a game that kind of sets up really quickly and plays within an hour or so and then you can put it back down, then it's possibly not for you because the game length is not problematic, but it is long, should I say. Set up and tear down, there's lots of little chits and you've got to understand where everything goes. And in your first game, it's going to take a while to understand exactly what goes where. It does get better, it does get easier. I can probably do it in about 10, 12 minutes now, set it up. I think when I first set it up, I was around about the 30-minute mark. But so do bear in mind that it's not necessarily a quick setup game, but I've got everything like in separate baggies now. There's no real storage in the box. It does come with a few baggies, but there's no real storage. But I've got everything kind of set up in baggies now, so it does make it easier to put away, and I kind of know where everything goes on the board now that I've played it. So yeah, set up and tear down, that's okay. The other thing to be mindful of is it can be incredibly swingy, and that happens because you've got these cards effectively driving the game. So it can feel incredibly swingy. It can be that you get into kind of halfway through your game, so you're halfway through, or maybe at the end of day 2, and you're being overrun, and your biohazard track is up near the end, and you're not going to make it, so you're going to have to reset and go again. So I think I played 4 games without a win, then I won 2 games on the bounce, and the second one I won very comfortably. The first one came down to literally the last turn of the game, the last token of the game. The second one I won very, very comfortably, and then my third one I lost, but I only just lost on the on my 7th game, should I say. I lost, but I only just lost there, and it can feel a little bit swingy as well. And I know there's some people online say it can be easy once you understand the flow. It gets easy, so do be mindful of that. That if you don't, if you don't like a swingy element to your games, then again, it may not be for you. It's not the end of the world. It's not the most swingiest game in the world, but it's there. And the other thing is that it's these event cards that kind of add to the swinginess, because so many things happen from these event cards, be it mutations coming out, be it dogpiling on you, be it certain other things happening. Because it's shuffled, you don't know where they are in there, and your early game could be really littered with some horrible events, some of the worst events, if you like, that are coming out there. And that may not be for you. So that's kind of some pluses and minuses for it. It's a long game, takes up a lot of table space, it can be swingy, but on the plus side, it's quite streamlined gameplay at the same time. Rules. I've not talked about the rules. So the game comes with a really good rule book. It comes with a reference guide, and it also comes with a player aid reference sheet as well as some of these player cards. Now, for a streamlined game, and it is streamlined once you get used to it, there are a lot of rules minutiae, and I think that could put some people off. And I think you've got to prepare yourself in your early games that you're going to make some mistakes, and that's absolutely okay. Don't worry about that. That's absolutely okay. You're going to make some mistakes. But go on the forums. Hermann Luttmann is really active on BGG and other forums in answering questions and straightening things out for people. But once that's done, you know, once you've got them down, once you've played a couple of games, you'll really understand the flow of it. And as I say, so once it's out there and you want to reset a game, that's okay. It's relatively easy to reset. It's just the initial setup that can take a bit of time. So rules-wise, I like it. There's a lot of information there, but it may take you a while to do it. Now, so yeah, just answering some of the points that I've described as kind of not quite hitting the mark for me. There is an expansion already been that's made the cut on GMT's P500 program. An expansion's going out, answers a lot of those. First of all, there's a nightmare mode being introduced, which means that the game can be made harder, and there's certain things that are going to add to that. There's new event cards coming out. There's some what's called alpha tiles that are going on the board as well, so the game can be made harder. There's additional factions coming, but also, more importantly, on the game length, there's going to be some scenarios that can be used as well. And these are shorter scenarios, so rather than playing a full kind of 2.5 hour game, you've got shorter scenarios, which is really, really good. That answers that question of, I don't have time to spend 2 or 3 hours with this game. I just want to play it for an hour and then put it away. So hopefully those scenarios. So it feels like Hermann's been very active in listening to what people have said and already come up with an expansion. It's already made the cut on GMT's P500 program, so it's available for pre-order on that. And I think that's fantastic, because I think once you get that, you've got a more complete package. It's quite an expensive game. I think you're going to pay around about 90 to £100 for the game. And I think that the expansion is going to be around about 50 or 60 quid as well. So it is quite an expensive game, and you've got to remember that as well. It's only available, I think, from GMT at the moment, or there are certain retailers that have it. I got mine from, I think it was called Second Chance. I think it cost me about 90 quid for the game. So do be aware, it's a pretty expensive game. So, my overall thoughts then on the Plum Island Horror. I like the game. It's, you know, I know some people think is already at this early stage, it's going to end up as their game of the year for them, and I've got no problem with that, because if you find something that you love and you know you love it, then that's absolutely great. I like the game. I think it is a very, very good game. I'm glad I got it, and it's a game I will continue to play. I'm going to have to spend that money, though, on the expansion to get the game that I want it to be. And I'm not saying that it was released half cocked. I don't think it was. I think, you know, had they released it with all the stuff that Hermann's putting in the expansion, it would have just made it too expensive for people. So by giving people a choice of having the expansion or not is there. If you just get this and not the expansion, then you're still in for a treat. But I think the expansion fixes some of the main issues that I have with the game, which is the game length, which is the potential swinginess of it, but certainly the fact that it feels like if you play it enough, it will become solvable. And nobody wants a solvable tower defense game, because, you know, where is the challenge in that? So yeah. So I like the game a lot. I feel like the expansion will make it a complete game. It's a good game, and, you know, it may well make my top 10 list of games at the end of the year, but I think there's just a few things that stop it being there. There's the value of it. It is expensive for what it is. There's not a lot of design that hasn't gone into this game, and a lot of love that's gone into this game. It's just the model it's gone through to get here means it is an expensive game, and it may put it out of reach for some people. There's a table of real estate. It is big, and that's not going to be for everybody. You know, it takes up my kind of, whatever my table is, my 5.5 foot long table. It takes up most of the space on that, and that's just me playing. Now, yes, I could probably fit another 2 people around this, but if you're playing it with 4 people, then you're probably going to need a very big bloody table to fit everything on, or some crazy Tetris with everything on there. So maybe the player boards could be made smaller. Player boards are single layer cardboard as well, and certainly for the price it's asking at, when you think of a game, I know it's different publishing, different model, etc., but a game like Voidfall, or a game like this, where you get quite thin player boards, where everything slides around, one table knock and cubes can go from one thing to the next. Means that I don't that cost versus what you get is not quite in balance for me. Maybe, but the gameplay kind of more than makes up for it. So that is a bit of a concern. The cardboard standees and chits and whatnot, I like, but my concern is as well is that each of these civilian tokens has a name on the back of them, and that can dictate some of the actions on the cards that come out, on the event cards, etc., or the search cards that come out. If you lose one of those, and there are lots of them floating around, and some VIP ones as well, if you lose one of those, then you have no means of actioning that card if it comes up again. And it is quite easy for these to kind of skitter off the table and off the mats because of the shininess of it. So maybe, if they did a spare sheet that you could have to kind of fill the tokens in, because it's not hidden information on there, it's just a name that's on there. So maybe provide people with some blank ones. If they lose one, they can just at least write one on there as well. But yeah, in terms of the actual gameplay itself, I like it. I think the rules minutiae could be off-putting for some people, and you're going to make mistakes in your first few games. Reset it. It's okay to make mistakes. Absolutely fine. We sometimes learn more from mistakes than we do from the stuff that we do right, because the rules minutiae is there. Now, say the forums are active. They've got lists of kind of easily missed rules on the forums. So do go and study those. Hermann's very active on there. Do use the reference book. Do use the rule book. There is a kind of semi-playthrough or tutorial playthrough in there as well that you can do. I didn't. I just jumped straight into the game after reading the rule book online and then getting the game itself. But they're all kind of... There's nothing here that makes me regret buying the game, because I think it's a really, really good game. It's not my favourite genre of game, kind of tower defence. As much as I've talked about rules minutiae, I do like a complex game. I prefer Dawn of the Zeds over this. Because I like that level of complexity. I like that, having the separate supplies, etc. Having just everything working in a slightly different way and not quite as streamlined and linear as it is on here. This works for some people more than Dawn of the Zeds. I prefer Dawn of the Zeds. Not quite having cinematic moments with this, and kind of the sheer number of units that you have on the board per faction can make it quite difficult to work out which unit you need to move for the best. And also, as it gets to the back end of the game, if you've evacuated enough civilians, you feel like you're kind of just running the game through to get to the end, so you try not to increase the biohazard level or get overrun, etc. And it feels a little bit anticlimactic, because you can get your evacuate civilians kind of halfway, 2/3 of the way through the game, and then it just becomes a staying exercise as you're trying to do that. It can also be very easy to flag up when the end of the game is going to be, and that kind of becomes anticlimactic as well, because if you know that your biohazard's going to go in the next few goes and you can do something about it, but you can't mitigate it that much, then again, you can just say, by the end of turn 7, that's it, I'm done, I'm resetting again. So yeah, the end game feels a little bit soggy, but it's, again, if you don't mind that, it's not an issue. I only found it an issue on a couple of games, but if you don't mind it, then that's not too bad. So the slightly soggy anticlimactic ending, but overall, what Hermann's done here is create a really good, solid experience that does tower defense really, really well, that you feel this kind of encroaching doom coming for you as you're and the dogpiling, as I say, of things getting worse and worse for you. And there's many paths to kind of securing your singular victory of surviving to day 9 and getting the evacuees out there. But there's also many paths for the game to come and kick you in the backside where you have to reset and start again. So overall, I do recommend the Plum Island Horror with some caveats. The table size, the game length, the price, the slight swinginess, and that kind of soggy-ish game end condition, or game end, should I say. A lot of that is going to be fixed in the expansion, but it's worth getting. Is it worth getting now and then also getting the expansion? Possibly, because if not, you're just going to have to buy them both together. And you may not end up liking the base game, and therefore you've got an expansion that you don't want. So, if it is of interest to you, and go and seek out other reviews on there, because I know other people absolutely love it. For me, it's a good game. It's almost it's a great game, but it's not this early in the year, it's not a game that's going to register as kind of my game of the year so far. But I enjoyed it a lot. So don't take all of my detrimental stuff to say that I don't like the game. I do. I'll happily play it any time. I will play it with other people as long as they've got the time to play it. I think the expansion is going to fix a lot of the issues that I have with the game. So there we go. That's the Plum Island Horror. A really good, solid solo experience, streamlined tower defense game, which is fun to play. And I think that's the key thing, is what Hermann has done is kept the fun of kind of the aesthetic and everything here. So thank you very much for joining me on this journey through Plum Island Horror from a solo perspective. I like the game. I like the game a lot. I've got issues with it. Some of those are going to be covered in the expansion that's already kind of, as I say, made the cut at GMT's P500. And I'm quite happily going to back the expansion because I want to see exactly how the game develops. So yeah, I hope that's helped you make some sort of decision on the Plum Island Horror. Go and watch Daniel's videos, as I say, on Tabletop for One, in terms of how the game plays and his thoughts on the game itself as well. I think it's Daniel's, already he's in love with this game, and quite rightly so. It's hitting every mark for him, and I love that about board games, how they can work for some people, almost work for others, and not work for other people. This, for me, works mostly for me with some caveats. So, thank you very much for watching. Go and check out the Plum Island Horror from GMT Games, designed by Hermann Luttmann. Yeah, I'm going to give my voice a rest now because this flu is kicking my backside. I've got my own kind of Plum Island Horror happening in my chest. Once again, thanks for watching. My name's Mark. This is Not Board Gaming. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. And one final thought. If you can't find anyone else to play with, then there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.